Good afternoon, everyone. So we have the guys from International. Hi, guys.
Hello. Hi.
And we have the guys from BYD and AUS Power. Hey, guys.
Hi guys.
Okay. All right. So if you guys can hear us correctly and perfectly there, please raise your hand. We're just going to check that all attendees can hear. So all the hands are up. That's good. So you guys can hear us. Perfect. Really, really good. All right. So for you guys who are attending the webinar today, thanks again for taking some time off your busy schedule. And for the installers in Victoria, we are 100% with you guys. So hopefully you guys can start installation soon. In terms of the presentation today and the training today, so that you guys have a really good experience. So you guys pretty sure can see our webcam, which is on. On the bottom right-hand corner, if you just hover under any of those videos, you can enlarge so that you can see better. So when the guys from Fronius International will do the presentation, I would highly encourage that you hover over their webcam and enlarge so that you have a better experience. So today it will be a mix. We're going to try to spend most of the time on the guys there, so pressure on you guys. And then we're going to also have a mix of slides. As you guys know, usually we start 5 to 6 minutes after the normal timing that we have. So definitely we'll start soon. We're just going to wait for more attendees coming. So just bear with us a few minutes and we will be there. All right. You guys should be able to see my screen now. So if you guys can see my screen, just raise your hand and you should be able to see me too. All right, so you guys can see me and you guys can also see my presentation. All right. Just checking the timing. Yeah, just a few minutes. Just gonna wait for a few minutes. All right, so we have a few people in the line. We have Ian Kluwer here. Thanks for joining, guys. We have Colin Bromley from CJ Bromley. Quite glad that you guys can make it today. Please feel free to introduce yourself if you want. All right. We have Lewis also joining us. A few people. All right, looks like we can get the ball rolling here. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us for this webinar. And today what we're going to talk about is our new Fronius GEN24 Plus, but we also have BYD joining us today for the presentation, where they will talk a bit about what's happening with BYD, but also on their side with new products coming in line. So they will give us a quick, I would say, update there. So before we start, I will introduce the speakers or the presenters today. So we have Jay Shea from AUS Power. We have Joey from BYD. Then we have Christophe from Fronius International. Sandro also from the same team. And finally, myself from Fronius Australia. So let's jump straight to the Fronius GEN24. So what we have ready for you guys here is basically just the key points on the product. Definitely we will have, let's say if you guys need more salesy presentation and you need more information, for sure we can cover that a bit later on, but today will be really the hands-on experience where the guys will install the product. So before I jump in and talk about the Fronius GEN24, one important part of the system is the smart meter. So if you want to see consumption on site with the Gen24, and if you need to install a battery, one of the crucial part or component is the Fronius smart meter. So we have a 63 amp free phase, the direct connect smart meter, and then we also have a CT-based smart meters, which is the 50K free phase and the 480 UL meter. Important point there is that you use the correct CTs. So for the 50K, it's 5 amp secondary CTs, and for the 480, it's 333 millivolt CTs. Where you install the meter is at feeding point here. So for example, if you're outside, you have a utility meter. The Fronius smart meter just need to come after that. Then on the, let's say, right-hand side, you have all your inverter, your loads. So that's how the physical location of the meter. So basically, most of you guys, I'm pretty sure, have installed a Fronius smart meter this way. So this is the most common practice, but the guys will go through this part later on. So today, what we're gonna look at is the Fronius Symo GEN24 Plus. The power classes that we are bringing to Australia will be 6, 8, 10. This inverter has a broad voltage range, which means only 3 modules is enough to start the inverter. So you can see here the MPPT voltage goes from 80 to 800 volt. This inverter has 2 MPPT for PV and 1 input for the battery. So high amperage here, so 25 amps on the first tracker, 12.5 on the second one, and the battery input is 22 amps. Also, you can oversize this inverter by 150%. So if, let's say, you have a 10 kilowatt inverter, you can put 15 kilowatt. And what is really interesting, when you put a battery with the inverter, depending again with which battery you choose, you can convert 10 kilowatt from the panel, and then you can also harvest this over 5 kilowatt to the battery. So we will talk a bit about that, how this can be achieved. So this part where I explain about the 10 kilowatt inverter and 15 kilowatt worth of panel, let's take an example here. You can basically send the power from the PV to your loads, at the same time send power to the battery, and that's what we call the multi-flow technology. And let's say the total amount of what you can get from the PV is not restricted by the inverter size. So you can send 10 kilowatt to your loads, at the same time send 5 kilowatt to your battery. So if this is a 10 kilowatt inverter and 15 kilowatt worth of panel. This function, the multi-flow technology, can be also done when the grid goes down. So we will show you guys some examples a bit later on. And for those systems out there which already have a inverter or a Fronius inverter, we can also adapt this multi-flow technology when, for example, charging the battery from the panels and also charging the battery from the AC side. So that's where you can have this multi-flow technology happening there. So also backup is quite an important point. So today we won't show you how to install the backup option, but the features that come with the inverter. So the first one is called a PV point. So this is your cost-effective solution. So if the grid goes down, you have a separate AC output on the inverter, which the guys will show. And this, let's say GPU or power point in your house, you will need to manually plug a load, and it's limited to 3 kilowatt. And then again, in this particular case, you can charge or let's say charge your battery from the PV directly there, and at the same time send power from the PV to your PV point. The only tricky thing there is that it is again limited to 3 kilowatt. The advantage of using this feature is you don't need to do any other wiring saying this is your essential load, this is not your essential load. But if you want to say, let's say, have the full backup for your system, that's where you can install a backup switch. So let's say the grid goes down, that's where the multi-flow technology will also play a big part there, where the PV generator can send all the power to the battery, or at the same time, you can send the power to your house load. And let's say if your loads are quite high, you can basically have the power going from your PV generator to the household, and also from the battery to your household. This part, depending on, let's say, your loads, sometimes you will need to do some rewiring there. So having your essential load and non-essential load. So this is basically the multi-flow technology with the backup option. So now let's look at some key features with the inverter. So we have active cooling. You guys know that it's been in nearly all our inverter, and it's really important in terms of performance of the inverter, but also the lifespan of components. So we made it better with a new heat sink. So the guys will show you a bit more about that, but also the fan is large in diameter, so we don't need to run the fan at 100% to have the same type of cooling efficiency. So that's something pretty new and exciting about the inverter. We have energy management, same as what we have with the snap inverters. So you're able to control up to 4 devices and control EVs, for example, EV charger. And the last part is servicing. We all know that all those inverters or even solar system will need to be serviced at a point in time. And that's where servicing is really important on our side. So with the Fronius GEN24, you will see that there's only one power stack in it, so one board that you will need to exchange, and the new monitoring card, which again, the guys will show a bit later on. So here, the process is really simple. We also have this snap feature where you have the wall bracket, but the whole exchange process with this particular inverter will be pretty simple. So now I will pass it to Christoph and Sandro to show you the unboxing of the inverter.
Yes, thank you very much, Sebastian, for your introduction, and also thanks for the invitation. We are here today. My name is Sandro, and this is Chris. We are from the headquarters at Fronius International in Wales. Today we are in our 24 Hours of Sun Academy. So we build up for you today a setup of the Symo GEN24 Plus, and in combination with the BYD BatteryBox Premium HVM. And I would say we just start right into the topic. Let's get to Chris, who will take over the first part with the installation process of the Symo GEN24 Plus.
All right, thank you very much, Sandro, for the introduction. So hello guys, and we first of all start with the installation process of the Gen24 itself, of course. So we have it mounted here just for showing purposes, but what actually is the first step when we get the device is, of course, the unboxing of the product. So just want to show you, so it arrives in such a box, the Gen24, and first thing, by opening it, we can see here a series of pictures. You can look it up when you get your product then, and with this series of pictures, we can get a first glimpse how to install it. But there is another way how we can look it up, because the first thing when opening the package is such a quick start guide. It's just 2 pages, more or less, one front page and 2 pages, where the whole installation process is shown from start to beginning, from start to finish. Yeah, and then the next part, what we can see when opening the package, is the wall mounting. Just to show it here, so it's such a lightweight wall bracket which has to be mounted first of all. Of course, we already did this in this case, but this would be the first thing you see when opening the package. So the next thing available for us to grab then is the actual inverter, the actual device, the power unit, and we need to snap it in. So as we can see, maybe also from this angle, there is such snap-in hooks, and the device has to be snapped in. It makes a very clear clicking sound when we do it right. And then it looks like this setup. Like here, we have the power unit installed. We can see the cooling ribs, the very prominent cooling fan in the front. And at the bottom, we can see a second cover. The first cover, the front cover actually, is our last step. We won't do that now because first of all, we need to do the cabling, of course. And when we have hung it up like this, we now open the actual bottom cover. So I want to do it here with these 5 quick locking screws. We can see here, quick locking screw means It's a normal Torx 20 screwdriver, and it's a 180-degree turn, and the whole thing opens up such like this. Now we can put it aside, and now we can see the actual terminal for DC, for AC, for the communication. Everything is inside this compartment here. And I quickly want to go from left to right. So we have on the left-hand side the DC inputs. Strings are connected here. So both the PV and the battery is connected here for plus and minus. Then in the middle, we can see here the actual communication unit actually from the inverter. It's called the pilot, the communication card itself, and it's covered with this separation cover just to secure it from DC or AC voltages. And on this actual communication card, there we have our Modbus communication, RS485 standard. It's the same thing we had before with the snap inverter. And we need it, like Sebastian told us, for cabling the Fronius smart meter and the BYD battery. Just wanted to showcase another product we've already seen in the beginning of the presentation. This would be such a Fronius smart meter. We have installed it here in this scenario, but it's out of your vision. It's down below, and it's at the feed-in point in our case. Yeah, and to the right side of the communication card, we can see two things. One is the PV point. The PV point is actually a single phase outlet for opportunity backup power. This could be cabled to a separate wall socket and is only supplied in grid outage. So when the grid is gone and we have installed this outlet, the inverter will start up in backup power and will run the system, but only this single phase outlet we have installed. And right next to the PV point, we have our AC terminal where we are connected to the grids then. All right, that's actually it for the installation process. When we have done this, we need to cover up, of course, the bottom panel here. So again, we have our 5 quick locking screws. Just close it up. And last step for the installation process of the Gen24 is the actual front cover. It's then mounted on top here. It's hanged in at the top. We put it down like this, and then at the very bottom we have again 2 quick locking screws. Just tighten it up, and then we are done. So that's actually it. And before we go to the commissioning of the inverter, we hear a few words of BYD regarding their installation process. And there I want to hand over to you, Sebastian.
Thanks, Christoph. I will then pass it to Joey now, who will give us some updates from BYD.
Okay, thanks, Sebastian. I just share my screen. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Joey. I'm look after the BYD BatteryBox sales in the Australian market. And today is a pretty exciting moment. And thank you for the invitation from Fronius. So I just go a quick introduction of the BYD company and the BatteryBox product. So to those who haven't heard of the BYD before, the BYD stands for Build Your Dreams and also Bring You Dollars. So the company was established in 1995, and currently we have about 230,000 employees all across the world. And last year, the revenue was about $19 billion US. And it's also the company that Warren Buffett invests 10%. So the BYD company is actually a global companies with over 30 manufacturing sites globally, and especially in Australia, we have the head office in Sydney, Australia, and also we have all the distributors across the whole Australia. So go to the product. So the BYD BatteryBox, the product, and early this year is very exciting year for us that we launched a total new generation of the BatteryBox. It's called the BatteryBox Premium. So just have a quick overview. We have the high voltage range, HVS and HVM. And we also got the low voltage range, 48 volt. We've got two versions, LVS and LVL. So obviously today we'll focus on the high voltage range and just have a quick summary of the high voltage premium. So BYD side, we actually offer two models. One is the HVS, which means the small, and the other one is the HVM, which means the medium. So the product you see from the Fronius International is the HVM versions. And you can see from the presentation that the HVS one module capacity is 2.56 kWh, and then the HVM per module capacity is 2.76 kWh. And for HVS, it starts from 5.1 kWh to 12.8. And HVM, it starts from 8.3 up to 22.1 kWh. And for both versions, you can parallel 3 stacks. So you can actually see the HVS from 2 modules up to 6 modules. And furthermore, you can get up to 3 stacks, which means the maximum is about 36 kWh. And also for the HVM, you can start from 3 modules and up to 8 modules, which give you the capacity of about 22. If that's not enough, you can get also up to 3 stacks in parallel. So I'm not going to talk about more detail because you're going to see in the next section the real product. Just give an overview that this new series have a lot of advanced functionality and the benefit for you. Especially the installation is pretty easy. Just a few modules stacked on each other, and then the connection is also pretty easy. So the left-hand side, we get an isolated area for the cable connections, and then you can also see that on the live video. And also, this is like pretty compact batteries. It's only about 300 millimeters thin, so it's kind of a very slim battery for your household. I just want to give you some mention that we also have the minimum configuration list because we got a modular design. So some of the models, because of the voltage range, is not compatible. So please make sure that you check the BYD BatteryBox website or also our local Australian service partner S-Power website. So there's a minimum configuration list which shows which model of the battery is compatible with which inverter Fronius models. And specifically with the Fronius, so you can see with the HVS and HVM with the Gen24 Primal or Symo, the different combinations can have the different power. So charge and discharge power. And to just make sure that you get the right right solutions and for the right output power for you. Yeah, just the last slide from my side is just some of the very exciting installations in Australian market. And yeah, so that's basically everything pretty much from my side. I'll hand over to Sebastian, give you more the live introduction. Thank you.
Thanks, Joey, for the update there. I will then pass to the guys at Fronius International, so they will show you now how to install the battery.
Yes, thanks, Joey and Sebastian. We are here back in the lab. So what we did in the first step was the commissioning or the installation of the GEN24 Plus Fronius, and now we start with the battery. So it's I would say a straightforward process. So you see it's more or less a plug-and-play solution. We have got here the BYD HVM, that means with 4 modules. With each of the module has got a storage capacity of round about 2.8 kilowatt hours. If you want to realize such a battery storage system, please be sure to check the compatibilities. Joey already mentioned it, because not every Fronius inverter is compatible with every battery, so please check that in advance before installing it. So I am 1 meter and 90 centimeters tall, and this is the unit with 4 modules, but you can sum it up to 8 modules. That means that would be higher than 2 meters, so it gets quite tall, with a maximum storage capacity of each battery with 22.1 kilowatt hours for the HVM battery. Okay, let's come to the installation. So I have put here 1 module. It's delivered by in such a box. Again, we have got the quick start guide. I can highly recommend it to you. And there is one very important page in it, which shows you the different options, how you can connect it to the Fronius inverters. One page is for the GEN24 Plus, and the other one is for our Fronius Symo Hybrid, our existing hybrid inverter out of the Snap Inverter series. Okay, so Chris, can you maybe give me some assistance now?
For sure.
One module has got 38 kilograms, so this one is now a dummy, so it's much more light in weight, but I will just show you how it is done. So just put it out. It's delivered in such a box. This is one module. It has got, depending on the battery type, 1 or 2 lines on it. If it's a 2-line version, that's the HVM. So please do not mix up the HVS and the HVM. That's very important. Okay, and then you just plug it into it, and on top there is all the time the BCU, the battery communication unit, which is identical to the HVS and HVM. This is also the reason why you have to tell then the battery, and in the commissioning process, what type of battery you're using, whether it's the HVS or the HVM device. Okay, so we put it back, and I think the most important thing now is this side of the battery. So on the one hand, we have got the main breaker of the battery, which is normally switched off now. If you have finished the cabling, you have to switch it on, the main breaker of the battery. On the front side of the battery, you have got now a LED light, that means which indicates you if the battery has opened its access point, or if it's in operation mode, that is I would say your interface, your optical interface you have with the battery. And if we look inside the battery, so we have here a camera view, what you can see here at the connection unit. One port we have got with the DC buses. That means here comes the DC plus and the DC minus from the battery, from the inverter. There are 2 options now how you can connect the Fronius inverter. On the one hand, you have got here a pin board, a pin terminal. This is effectively how we did it now. So we connected here the Modbus communication, RS485, and this white one cable is the plus 12 volts signal, which is additionally necessary when you connect it with the Fronius inverter. Another option would be via this LAN port, that means via Cat5 cable. Then you would simply plug in here with the cable in this port, cap it on the other side, and then do the cabling on the pilot of the GEN24 Plus device. That means on the data communication card. One thing maybe important to mention is this termination resistance. So this is a dip switch. You can maybe it's the switch in the middle for RS485 communication. Please be sure if the inverter is at the end of the communication line to set the correct termination resistance on the Modbus communication. Okay, so maybe coming back to the pilot. that would be the cabling of the installation process at the battery. And on the pilot, we have got this. We've got 3 orange plugs. That means we would need this plug in the middle. And on this plug in the middle, there are 2 Modbus communication possibilities. There is Modbus 0 and Modbus 1. You can decide yourself what Modbus port you're using, whether Modbus 0 or Modbus 1. That doesn't matter. In fact, please decide for one port. Again, very important is to have set correctly the termination resistance, which is also a dip switch here at the front, which is Modbus 0 and Modbus 1, which you can see here, which is important to set. So it's the plug in the middle, and this also the plus 12 volt signal, which is additionally needed for the BYD, is on the pilot. Okay, so far to the communication. Maybe just to summarize, Chris, we have painted a flip chart for you. So that's the setup we did effectively. So we have got now here our inverter, then the battery. It's communicating via RS485 and the plus 12 volts. Here we got one termination resistance with the dip switch I showed you before. And we also have the smart meter with the RS485 communication. That means the other termination resistance is set here. So we have this in line and everything is working correctly. Hopefully we will see it afterwards. If there is any error in the commissioning or installation process, we would see it then afterwards via setting the points in the wizards. But before we do that, I will hand back to you, Sebastian, and BYD.
Thanks, Sandro. Maybe one question for you there, which came through, was what size of DC cable can you use from the battery to the inverter?
From the inverter, this DC cabling is a maximum of 10 square millimeters. That's the max what you can connect to the inverter and the battery.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So now I will pass it to BYD. So Joe will basically show us how to, Jay will show us now how to commission the inverter, the battery, sorry, and also will explain a bit more about the installation.
Thanks, Sebastian. And can you see my screen or?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thanks. And I'm just gonna quickly summarize. Just basically, if you guys missing something in the live demonstration from Fronius International, is the cable, the DC cable size is up to 10 mil cable, and you will need basically a couple of the COM cables and the grounding wires to finish the installation. And as the live demo already showed, to get the battery installed, it's very quick and simple. Just putting together and a couple of the screw fix the connection. That's it. And this is show you the 2 options you can connecting the batteries to Fronius. The example is on Fronius Symo Hybrid. So on the first option is RS45. You need to remake the plug or the plug you already having there, just connecting on the other side. The other one is if you don't have the RJ45 terminal, want to using our quick connector on the battery, this is your option B. So, and this will be the 120 ohm termination resistor. And there's 3 options in the Fronius menu, and please check carefully. The position of the batteries will, and also the position of the inverter will make this differently. And on the commissioning, first is how to turning on the battery is you are using that circuit breaker on the right hand side of the battery to turn the battery on, and download the app. It's called the B Connect. So if you actually searching BYD, you cannot find this app, but if you search B Connect, follow in the menu, then you will downloading this app, and quite straightforward. Just connecting the Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi password is in the menu or is in the app. It show you the Wi-Fi password, and download the firmware, then update the firmware. And to commission the battery is also very straightforward. You see time and date, inverter Fronius. The battery model is either HVS or the HVM, the high voltage range, and basically on-grade backup, or I don't think you can selecting off-grade with Fronius at this stage. And checking the settings again and complete the setting. That's everything for commissioning the BYD battery. Very quick and simple. Just a couple of more points I would like to cover is we have quite of those new G24 inverters installed with our batteries now. And there's a couple of the like tips I can give you guys before you do the first installation is to turning on the battery is using the circuit breakers on the right hand side, and make sure you got the panels, everything is putting the system back on, because we have a new protection mode is a safety switch, which is if you leave the panel open, you cannot turn on the battery. The breaker will trip automatically. And to switch off the battery, the breaker is not shutting down the battery immediately. It's holding the power button 5 seconds to shut the battery down. So turning on the battery using the breaker, and turning off the battery using the power button. And the breaker can shut the battery down, but in 30 minutes. Another thing is the communication issues. I believe you guys installing different batteries, different inverters, you always see this communication issues. And this is very importantly to have the system working without any issues. And first, there's a 3 checkpoint if you actually see the inverter cannot recognizing the batteries. First is the checking that 120 ohm resistor is same as in the follow-up in the menus, and the default position on the battery is for 1 tower connection, so you don't need to change anything if it's 1 tower. If it's parallel multiple batteries, then follow the menu to change this accordingly. And second is just double check the communication wiring. If the battery is actually flashes, blue and white 11 times, it is definitely a communication issue and it's not a faulty battery. Please double check on your wiring, or maybe even using a different communication cable. Just trying to confirm, okay, this is not a communication issue. It's gonna save a lot of time on your troubleshooting and also for our service team. And the minimum requirement for this communication cable is a Cat5 shielding cable. Okay, and the third solution is to reset the entire system, which means you got the inverter shut down, you got the batteries shut down, and waiting 2 minutes. Always turning the battery on first before you turning the inverter on. Okay, this is also very important. Battery on first, then inverter second. Otherwise, you will see the battery trips. And also, this is just the order of the system. You need to follow exactly in the menu. And this will be one most important document I would like to cover. You can either download from the BYD website or the local service Alps Power website. It's a self-troubleshooting guide, which is if you are sometimes waiting in the line on the service call on the hotline, we do have a self-service guide very detailedly telling you what fault that means, what's the solutions, and basically helping you to just fix the issue by yourself if you are on waiting. So simply is for example, one is on the battery power button, if it's flashing a one white and one blue. So 101, that's one white and one blue. That means check the DC cable or reset the system will fix the issue. So just keep these documents in handy. Is for most of the cases is actually if you have this checklist, when you're calling our service, we can help you very quickly and we'll let you know which page you should go after, and that's the solution. And that's for all, and thanks for guys, and I'll hand over back to Sebastian.
Thanks, Jay. I think there's like a few questions which I think is quite interesting. So one of the question that was asked was, can we get the Modbus output to the external communication system? So I think the question there is, can you do third-party communication with your battery?
At the moment, the third party, if the customer it means like the DC charger, then or something that's over control the battery and the inverter system, we see on the market there's like reposits or those smart meters. They are able to control the inverter and the inverter able to control the battery. There's no directly control on the battery is needed at the moment. So if the inverter can be controlled on that third-party device, the inverter will basically control the battery, follow the from that third-party device.
Yeah, maybe the other question then also was, can you use a C-bus cable on your side?
A C-bus cable,
yeah, a CAN bus cable.
No question.
On your on your batteries.
To like for the communications between the G24
the inverter
to the battery.
And yes, instead of using a Cat5 cable, can you use a C-bus cable?
I have to follow that one up, and could you please? I need to follow that one up.
Sure. So
thanks.
Yeah, no worries. We'll follow this one up. All right. So now what we're gonna do is the guys from Fronius International will set up the inverter so that you guys can have a look at this particular process. To you guys.
All right. Thank you very much. Now it's the last step we need to do in our sequence, and that is the commissioning of our product, the Gen24 inverter. So one thing I want to mention before we go into that is the sequence of the commissioning of those both components. So please make sure before you do the commissioning on the inverter side, it's perfectly fine to do it on BYD side, but please keep the DC switch to the off position until the battery is on. So first of all, switch on the battery, then turn on the DC switch. Please keep in mind that this sequence, sometimes the battery is not found if we do it afterwards, if the DC switch is turned on before that. So just keep it in mind. So now we heard all we need to know about the BYD commissioning process. Now on the Gen24 inverter, we don't have a display. We can already see that, but we have two status LEDs, and in the middle of that we have a sensory button, and that's what we need for our commissioning process. So we have already connected it. AC and DC is switched on in our case, so we can see it here. It's turned to the on position, and now we want to activate the access point on the inverter, and that is done by one click at the middle, and then the right LED, the communication LED, starts blinking blue. That means the access point is open for half an hour, and now we have time to configure it with a smartphone, with a tablet, or with a laptop. So we have for our new product a new app already available. It's called the Solar Start app, and you would be able to download it right now onto your smartphone, for example, and do the commissioning with it. I want to show you the same thing with laptop. It's very similar. And now I will head over to my laptop. So you should be able to see now my laptop, my screen here. And the first thing we need to do is, of course, we need to connect with this open access point of the inverter. So on my list here, I can see Fronius underline and the serial number. That's in my case the Fronius Gen24 inverter. I click on connect. Takes a few seconds for the connection to build up. And then for those of you who are already familiar with our Snap Inverter series and the commissioning process with our laptop, it's the same IP address we need to type in our browser. So here on top we can see it's the same IP address, actually this number here, 192.168.250.181. It's the same number with our Snap inverters. We type it in and then we land actually on the start page of our Gen24 inverter. And when we do it the first time, it looks like this. So we have 3 buttons here for the commissioning process. So it's 3 sequence for the finished product. First one is about the network, and that's what we head straight into it. And yeah, actually the first thing he's asking for is the first password we need to set, and it's called the customer password. So you can set it there when doing the first installation, and with this first password, with the customer password, the customer can do afterwards. For example, if he's changing the Wi-Fi setting in his home, he can then get into that with the customer password and do a change of network connections. Yeah, and first of all, we need to set here a PV system name. I've called it here Gen24 simply. It's already showing me time zone location, and so on. It's perfectly fine here, and we can click next. Next up, terms and conditions. It need to be accepted here. You can see it, we agreed it a while ago, so it's not the first installation of this product. And we need to click next here. And then it is showing us 3 options how we can connect to the internet, either via Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or a steady open access point. So it's 24 hours, it's an open access point. But in our case, we want to do it via Wi-Fi. We have a Wi-Fi network available in here, and we want to connect to it. I've already done it. That's why we can see here connected, it reads, and we can click next. Then we have done the first part. The network connection is done. We can see it then with a green check mark, and we can proceed with the second step, the actual product setting. So quickly click on that, and there we are asked to type in a second password. That's a technician password. So the customer isn't allowed to do anything in here because there is sensible settings, of course. So only the installer should know it. Oh, sorry. So, and yeah, the first thing is actually we're already familiar with that. It's the PV system name, time zone, and so on. But down below, there is something new. There is the country setup we need to set. In our case, we're here in Austria. We selected Austria and cosinus phi. We would be able to change it here, for example, to 50 Hertz, or Australia, for example, could be also selected here. And then we click next. Then we come to the device configuration itself. First thing we need to do is, of course, we need to select a generator size. So the nominal power we need to type in here. I've listed here 1 kilowatt is connected to PV1, so MPP tracker 1. The second one isn't operating. There is nothing connected here. Second thing that can be set here is the smart meter. In our case, I've told you we have a primary smart meter at the feed-in point of our system. We simply select here grid connection point. We have a green LED status on top. It means we get data, it's perfectly fine configured, and we can proceed. And last but not least, of course, we need to select the battery. I've selected here the battery BYD Premium, HVS and HVM. There would be some settings where we can do different SOC levels of the battery, but we highly recommend to leave it on auto, as this is then a warranty issue, more or less, so keep that in mind. By clicking on next, we come further on to functions and the digital IOs. So we have load management options inside. Don't want to go into much detail, but these two options are available, or what we can select here: backup power and load management. So in our case here, for example, the backup power is selected. We have nothing connected to it, so we would need switches at the feed-in point to turn off the mains, but it would be able to connect here. Also, we can choose here the PV point, as I mentioned earlier, would be also possible. And as I mentioned, with the load management, you could define a digital output and what has to be connected with it. So for example, we have a certain threshold with a certain amount of feed-in, and then we want to switch on this or that load. And last but not least, that's the last step in this product setup, is the export limitation. Not necessary in our country, but somewhere else maybe. We can limit the entire system to a certain amount of watt or percentage of the whole nominal DC power connected. So in this case, only 60% of those, in this case, 1000 watt would be able to feed into the grid. That's what would be able to set here. All right, it's not necessary in our case, so we can click next, and then the product setting is done. Everything is working, the product is feeding, is producing and feeding in. One last step would be the solar web. So with one click here, we would be transferring to our online portal on SolarWeb and be adding a system. It's telling me that, okay, for that we need an internet connection. I don't want to go into detail on that now. Sandro will tell you more about the SolarWeb later on. But before we do that, I quickly want to show you the dashboard of this system we have here right now. And we can see the energy flow of the system. So it's a small PV connected here. We are producing 139 watt. And because we have no load connected right now, everything is stored in the battery. And now,
but
Sandro,
what we will do now is, because that shows you the simultaneous energy flows, it's actually a live visualization. And now I will add to the Gen24 Plus an AC load. That means we have a room heater in here, and I will just turn it on now. So it has got a nominal power of around about 2 kilowatts. And you see there was a sudden load jump, which was for brief time supplied by the grid.
About a few seconds.
A few seconds, 1 or 2 seconds. And now all the energy is taken out of the BYD BatteryBox. And
the rest of the PV, of
yes,
course.
And the rest of the PV. We have only a small PV generator connected of 100 watts. And yes, you see that's all live data and all the simultaneous flows are visible. Now I turned it off, and again, the same procedure.
All right. Thank you very much for the showcasing. And now, before we finish our session here, I want to hand over to Sandro, and he will show us on the SolarWeb a live system. Therefore, I need to switch back to the internet. Quickly connect here to the internet.
So we will just show you now quickly the SolarWeb. So that's the last step of all the 3 wizards. There is the technical wizard, the product, the network, and the SolarWeb wizard. And the SolarWeb wizard always ends up with this page, with the start page of the SolarWeb, which you can see here. That's now, I would say, example. I will show that's not the system we we commissioned today. So that's another one, an existing, but effectively it looks the same. You can see here the bubble chart we already saw in the web user interface of the inverter with all the live data, the battery here connected. What is very important is the energy balance. So that's quite helpful. I will just show it later on. And additional features we have got here, for example, a weather widget, which gives you an outlook for the future next days regarding the yield. That means there is also you have the possibility to have the yield forecast. It means according to the weather data, there is the PV yield expected on your individual site. Just go into the energy balance. I think that's the most interesting when it comes to battery storage integration. I just go back here 1 or 2 days. For example, here, 1 day afterwards. Just this is an example. So it's an average day, where there is PV yield. It was very foggy the last days, so that's the reason why here from 9 to 12, I would say there is not that much yield. But at noon roundabout, the PV yield the PV system started operating quite good. And you see here green underlaid, that's the PV production. But first of all, you see here a orange underlaid area, and that's effectively the surplus energy which directly went into the battery. That means that's the power to battery path. Till I would say noon, you have got 100% self-consumption because you stored all your surplus energy in your battery. And I think this is also for your customers maybe a very, very good advanced view. If you would add here an ohm pilot, and that means our hot water solution, this would also be integrated here. Means that would be another step how you can raise your self-consumption, which is quite good visible in our Solar Web, in our free monitoring tool. Good. That was it so far. That what I wanted to show you. Maybe I hand back to Sebastian now. So Sebastian, did we receive any questions from the audience?
Yes, Sandra, one interesting question was, can the Gen24 handle the inductive load in full backup mode?
What was the question exactly? If we can handle
inductive load, like motors?
Yes, we can handle that. So principally,
and it can handle three phase. Sorry to add, but it can it also handle the like a free phase, like for example, like air conditioning free phase?
Yes. So what we have got in full backup mode with the Symo GEN24 Plus and the BYD battery, so we have real three-phase backup power. That means depending on your battery size, with charge and discharge currents of up to 9 kilowatts, if you have the biggest battery or the battery with the highest voltage, depending, we saw the slide from Joey before, but we can also provide in backup operation big loads, three-phase loads like the air con or a heat pump, something like that, pool pump.
That's awesome. I think one other question that we got, which was quite common there, was can we parallel two of those Symo GEN24 there? So maybe I will take this one because we are also doing some R&D here in Australia. So for anyone who wants to install two of those Symo GEN24 on the same site, it is possible, but they can't talk to each other. So if, for example, let's say you have a Symo GEN24 with a battery and it's another Symo GEN24 sitting next to it, you will be able to charge the battery from the PV and from this other inverter at the same time. So there's no issues. But for example, if there's export limit, we can control only this one inverter. There are plans that you can basically have multiple of those hybrid inverter connected together. So Fronius International is working on it. At the moment, one update that I can give you from our side is there's also a company here in Australia doing some testing on the Symo inverters, where you can have basically two Symo Gen24 and two batteries connected, like one battery each. So we are working on that. So there will be a solution coming soon in regards to this one. There was some question about the Symo Gen24. So that's something that I can maybe also answer here for the single phase. We know that Australia is a big market for single phase, so I'm pretty sure the guys from International know that we are putting a lot of pressure. We're trying our best, so we should get updates soon. So we're really pushing hard to try to get it this year. I won't promise anything at the moment, but what the dates that I have on my side is basically Q1 next year. No exact thing, but there may be some surprise. I can't really tell you. We are working on something at the moment, so we'll see if we can make this happen. So there was other questions coming in. I think all the questions are coming in here. So if there is an existing Symo inverter with a smart meter, do you need to have a second smart meter for the Gen24 as well, or can you use the same one?
No, that's actually not necessary. So as we've mentioned, we can add two systems on SolarWeb together. So it doesn't matter if it's two Gen24 or a snap inverter and a Gen24, but you can add them, you can connect them both to the internet and on SolarWeb, add it on the same PV system, and then there the inverter numbers are summed up. It shows one whole system, and you only need one smart meter at the feeding point connected to either one of them. Yeah.
So if you have a battery, of course, it will need to go to the Gen24.
Exactly. Good point. If you have a hybrid inverter, in our case the Gen24 connected, and you want to add a battery, it has to be on the Gen24.
So then, just reading through. So another question is the backup like a UPS, or there is a period for switchover for the Symo Gen24?
Yes, I can take this question. So it is no uninterrupted power supply. So we have got a short time period, which is around about 60 to 90 seconds, where if there is a grid outage, the house is not supplied by the inverter or is not in PV or in a backup mode already, then the inverter builds up his own grid. So he detects sometimes the grid, if it's available or not. And if he's 100% sure that is in a time period of 60 to 90 seconds, he starts up in backup power mode. So a switching time of 60 to 90 seconds, yes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe there's another question here. So if there's no battery, do I need to install the Fronius smart meter now? So maybe I can answer this one. So you don't need to have a Fronius smart meter installed straight away, but I would recommend to install one. Why? Because if you have a Fronius smart meter installed with your inverter, and let's say down the track you want to install a battery, it would be easier to size the battery because we have a tool on our SolarWeb portal where you can run some simulation of, okay, if I have this size of battery, how much independent I am from the grid, for example. So there are a few things that I would highly encourage to have a smart meter. So just checking if there's any question for BYD. We've been taking most of them here. Doesn't look like there are any coming through. There was one about where can we find the troubleshooting guide from BYD, maybe?
Yes, I have been basically. I think I answered most of the questions. The troubleshooting guide is actually on the BYD BYD BatteryBox.com. You can download in. It's under the technical information section. You can download that, and I think I got some help from the like on the previous question on the C-bus cable. So basically, the C-bus cable from that one customer mentioned that it's just the Cat5 cable without the shielding. So I believe is from the Fronius side is you required that communication cable is minimum Cat5 with shielding. So the C-bus cable is not basically it's not recommended. And I think that's it.
All right. I think that's pretty much it here. If you guys have any question, I will type it down there. You can email PV solution at Fronius Australia. So basically, this is a queue where we answer all the question. All the engineers, I would say pre-install, will answer your questions. So I will send that to all of you guys. Maybe for on Joey's side on BYD, how do they get in touch with you? Oh, we can't hear you, Joey. Still can't hear you. Looks like there's a small
so far so good.
Yeah. I think what we're gonna do, we're gonna send you guys the presentation, so you will get the slide and the presentation later on. And also in the slides, there will be some contact information. So please feel free to get in touch with us. I really want to thank BYD and Alts Power for participating, and a big thanks to our team at Fronius International. I think we're quite lucky having you guys here for us. It's been really, really helpful. As you guys know, we are based in Victoria. We can't really go out, but those guys really, we say, moved mountains over there for us. So really appreciate it. And thanks again to everyone joining our webinar today. Really appreciate it, and I hope I can catch up with you guys soon as this is over, I would say. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
You guys.